Picture this. You're at the doctor's, but we've dialed the clock back, about 700 years. There's no stethoscope, no blood pressure cuff, none of that. Instead, the physician is holding just one single tool up to the light. It's a glass flask, and what's inside is a patient's urine. And believe it or not, they thought that this one little sample held all the secrets to a person's health. And this wasn't just some weird folk remedy. It actually had a formal name: uroscopy. For centuries, this was a cornerstone of medicine. It was a whole sophisticated system with roots that went all the way back to ancient Greek, Byzantine, and Islamic traditions. The basic idea? Well, it was actually pretty profound. They believed urine was filtered blood, which meant it was a direct window into everything happening inside the body. So you gotta wonder, right? How did this simple glass flask, which they called a matula, become so important that it was literally the symbol of the entire medical profession? Well, the answer is all about what doctors thought they could see swirling around in that liquid. And you have to understand, to them, this made perfect sense. Urine wasn't just waste. It was a message, a report card from inside the body. They saw it as a direct reflection of a person's internal state. It could reveal the health of your organs and, this is the most important part, the delicate balance of 4 essential fluids they called the humors. If those humors were out of whack, you were sick, and the urine told the whole story. Okay, so if the urine is like a message in a bottle, how in the world did they read it? Well, the very first and most important clue was its color. Every single shade told a different story. It all started with the color. So, for example, if a patient's urine came back looking pale or really watery, the doctor would immediately think there's an excess of phlegm, one of the humors they considered cold and moist. And that could lead to a diagnosis of, sluggishness or just a generally cold constitution. Now, on the flip side, if the urine was red or dark, that was a huge red flag for heat. It pointed straight to things like a fever, some kind of internal inflammation, or another hot imbalance that they'd need to cool down. But seeing green or urine that was especially cloudy, well, that was a whole other level of bad news. Physicians immediately linked that look to a really severe infection and a major disruption in the body's natural state. And then there was the one color nobody wanted to see: black. This was seen as an absolutely terrible sign, often interpreted as the body literally shutting down. For both the doctor and the patient, seeing black urine was basically a death sentence. And look, this wasn't just them making stuff up on the fly. To make their diagnoses consistent, they developed these incredibly detailed charts known as urine wheels. We're talking complex diagrams with over 20 different shades of urine, each one meticulously linked to a specific illness. Medical students had to memorize these charts, which really turned uroscopy into a structured, systematic science for its time. But here's the thing. The analysis didn't just stop with looking. These doctors used all of their senses. So what happened when the color just wasn't enough? What was the final, definitive test they turned to? They tasted it. Yep, that's right. And one of the most incredible discoveries they made this way was that sweet-tasting urine pointed to what they called a wasting disease, which we now know today as diabetes. I know, it's pretty wild to think about, but for them, it was a legitimate and absolutely crucial diagnostic tool. So, okay, the colors, the wheels, even the tasting, it all sounds completely bonkers, right? But here's the crazy part. It wasn't random at all. There was this big, elegant theory that tied everything together, and it was called the theory of the 4 humors. Here's how it worked. The theory said that your body had 4 main fluids, or humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each one was connected to certain qualities. If you were healthy, it meant all 4 were in perfect balance. So an illness was just in imbalance. The urine's appearance was thought to directly show which humor was in excess. So pale urine, too much phlegm; dark urine, too much black bile. The doctor's whole job was to figure out how to get you back in harmony, maybe with a special diet or even bloodletting. But you know how it goes with science. No theory, no matter how clever, lasts forever. And as new ways of understanding the human body started cropping up, this ancient practice began to fall out of favor. And you can really see this shift play out over hundreds of years. Through the Middle Ages, uroscopy was king. But then came the Renaissance with its new focus on anatomy and dissection, and doctors started to question these old symbolic ways of thinking. By the 17th century, with the rise of chemistry and a bigger focus on direct observation, academic medicine pretty much formally rejected uroscopy, calling it unreliable. But here's the twist. That wasn't the end of the story for urine analysis, not by a long shot. Because while the old methods and theories were left behind, the core idea that you can analyze urine to understand health turned out to be spot on. I mean, the connection to today is just undeniable. We've basically just traded tasting for testing. Instead of relying on our eyes and our taste buds, we now use powerful microscopes and super precise chemical test strips. And instead of the humoral theory, modern urinalysis is based on the hard science of biochemistry. But the goal? It's exactly the same. Find the clues about our health that are hidden in our urine. So yeah, it's really easy for us to look back and, laugh or cringe at these methods. But it's so important to remember that uroscopy was serious medicine. It was based on the absolute best knowledge they had at the time. It was their logical attempt to find patterns in the chaos of disease. And in its own strange way, it really did pave the way for the sophisticated tests we all rely on today. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What are we doing right now in our hospitals, something we think is totally normal, that people 500 years from now will look back on and think is just completely bizarre? I would love to know what you think, so drop your ideas in the comments. Thanks so much for diving into this with me. If you had fun on this little trip back in time, do me a favor and hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating history and science. I'll see you in the next one.